So, welcome everybody to the first Investors Journey podcast live stream. So, very excited to be able to do this. Um, there's been a lot going on in the market and in real estate, and people are freaking out. People don't know what options they have, what's going on. And many of the reasons for this is because many of us have not been through this kind of situations in the past. So it's very scary to think about it. It's very scary to think about, what's going to happen, what options do we have? So I figured why not get the people that I know that I rely on a regular basis to come on and give us their feedback, their opinions, their experiences. And with us today, I would like to introduce Mr. Daniel Francis, CEO of StepStone Realty. And Dan has been a great friend to us. I've known him for, I don't know, we were talking the other day with Angie, and I think it's like 5 or 6 years, I think, that I've known you guys. So it's been quite a while, and we have a mastermind group together. And every time I have any questions or anything about what's going on, I always reach out to him because I know I can definitely count on him for great advice, experience. And so I logically he was the first choice to bring him on and have him here. So without further ado, Mr. Dan, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks for having me on. I'm excited to do it.
So starting off, let's just get into it. What got you started in real estate? What made real estate that decision for you?
I don't really know. I mean, so my previous life, we always like to say real estate is most people's second career, not their first career, or at least a later career. And I was in politics. I was a political consultant, mostly doing kind of demographic analysis, polling, that kind of stuff for a consulting firm out of Austin, which was a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun when you're kind of younger, but it can be grueling, and very much, I was definitely somebody's employee, and I didn't like that aspect of it. Driving downtown to Austin every day, didn't like that aspect of it. So it was a lot of fun, but it was fun for a while, and just wanted to do something else. So actually, while I was still there, I started looking at real estate and saying, how can I get into it? It was nice to go into work because we had DSL internet, and at home I only had dial-up. Uh, it's like dating me way, way back, right? And so I could do a little bit better research online, but even then it was all static articles. It was just like people writing things online. Um, and read this article about somebody who, he's like, hey, I just wanted to take a vacation, so I went and I did some marketing real quick, just in a week. I said, I want a vacation. So he just sent out some postcards. He found somebody who wanted to sell their house. He went, made a deal, and then he wholesaled it for $2,000. And then he went on vacation. I was like, man, that sounds fun. And
Because it's
so just
that
kind of,
easy.
yeah, it sounds easy, right? Of course, it's never that easy, but it always has just been as much fun as I thought it
All right, very nice. And what do you feel that is something that helped you when you got started that you're like, this was something I had available to me at the time that got me started? Did you have a mentor or some form of education?
No, none at all. And I definitely think that made it harder for me. I would never advise anybody to go my route. I always call my route the Groundhog Day route. So referencing the movie Groundhog Day, again, I'm probably dating myself a little bit, but essentially where the guy wants to get a girl and every day he wakes up, it's the same day. So he works and he gets a little bit further and then has success, and then it all falls apart. So the next day he does all to that point, but then changes something. It's kind of how I learned how to do real estate, and it was, I think a lot of it was challenging, but at the same time, I think it gave me a different perspective than a lot of people have who learn from other people. It seems like a lot of real estate is just everybody trying to do the same thing the same way, and I came at it at I think a very much different approach. What I taught my self was out of books that I checked out of the library or what I found on the internet at the time, which was definitely internet 1.0, right?
With your
Uh,
dial-up modem.
yeah, there was no videos to watch. It was just static articles. That was it.
And what do you think is what do you have that is something unique that you believe is unique to you that has helped you succeed in this business?
I don't know if it's unique to me. I think it's unique. It's a quality that's required, and that's tenacity. That's just pure determination to get it done. People ask me, should I, get with a mentor? Should I get coaching? Should I pay for this program or that program? What do I need to do to get started in real estate? And I've seen people come in and come through expensive coaching programs or not do any coaching programs at all. And certainly there's coaching programs and mentorships. I think they can be a help to bring you up to speed in terms of knowledge.
Right.
There's no doubt about that, right? I mean, getting education in anything, right? It's going to increase your the speed in getting knowledge, but it's never to me determined who's successful and not successful. What I've seen over the years is who's successful at it is anybody that just is determined to be, and they don't have a plan B. That is their plan, and it can be hard to kind of just jump right into it, or certainly to quit your job or jump right into it, but just that determination, that motivation seems to be the biggest factor in success or not success. And I just wasn't going to let it fail.
So do you feel that that's the reason why we see so many people jump into real estate and actually fails? They don't have that determination to stick with it?
Yeah, if you're dipping your toe in, it's hard to do. If you're thinking that I'm going to give this a try and see how it goes, then it's going to be harder. But if this is what I want to do, this is what I'm going to do, I don't care what it takes, I'm going to do it, that seems to be more successful.
Right. And all right. So what came first? You went through 2008, right? You went through the crisis and then you started StepStone afterwards?
We actually started StepStone in 2007, just as a brokerage to have for ourselves, So Angie had just gotten her license in 2007, and we started StepStone immediately and made it a brokerage. You don't have to be a broker to own a brokerage. Most people don't know that. To own a licensed brokerage, you just have to have a sponsoring broker. And so we found a friend who sponsored the brokerage, but it really was just for our own deals. We didn't really look as we didn't envision it at the time as a brokerage that held the license of other agents. We were just we really didn't want to be bothered by another broker. We wanted to do our own thing. That was really what it was about.
And what made you grow it?
Um, a combination of things. We were trying various things to try to figure out how to scale up a business, right?
Right.
I always talk about there's a difference between being self-employed and being a business owner, and really that difference. And I'm not there yet. Don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to stand on my high horse or anything like that, because we're not there yet. A business to me is when you don't have to be a part of it for it to continue. And so, when you're a real estate investor, that's really being self-employed. And I see a lot of people make that transition and they're able to scale up and they're able to make a business out of it to where they could step out and that business could still continue. We were looking for that way in various kinds of ways. And our chief operating officer, Cameron, I think more out of frustration than anything, but I give her a lot of credit for having some vision at that point, was getting frustrated at some of the things we were trying. And she just said, well, why don't we just grow the brokerage? We have that. And that was kind of like a wow moment for us. And so we spent some time developing that idea and determining if that was a viable option. And then we kind of went for it.
And where is it now? Where's StepStone now?
We have we're a brokerage that's made for the creative real estate investor who has their license. So all of our agents are doing some sort of investing or interested in investing. Some are just learning about investing, but they all want to do creative real estate investing, and some of them are doing a ton of creative real estate investing. So it just kind of runs the gamut. I have 260 agents now, 260 plus, somewhere around that number.
Wow.
We're in the four major markets, DFW, Austin, San Antonio, Houston, and I've got three agents now in Corpus Christi.
And what's the difference between all brokerages out there and StepStone? Because to me, there's a huge difference. But I want to hear from you. Like, what do you guys feel is that difference from StepStone Realty to every other brokerage out there?
That we're a community of real estate investors,
Right.
and I use that term community. I have a lot of meanings for that term. There's other brokerages, I think, where you can get the freedom to do creative real estate investing, discount brokers, people who just don't care what you're doing. Truthfully, most of your brokerages, or in fact, I don't know of any brokerage that's not like this, that is about their community, usually prohibits creative investing kind of stuff. So if they're educating their agents, if they're working with their agents, if they're not just a discount broker, don't bother me, don't ever call, we're not going to help you, then they are specifically prohibiting activity like wholesaling. They're specifically prohibiting activity like listing a property on the MLS where the intent is to not sell the underlying lien, so doing a wrap, basically. Those kind of activities are prohibited. Most of them, in fact, prohibit an investor from listing their own property if they're doing it as a flip or wholesale or as a wrap. So what makes us unique is that we're built from the ground up to be a community of creative real estate investors, to allow them to do it, to help them do it, to educate them about doing it, and to create an environment where they can trade deals with each other fairly and honestly, where they can borrow money from each other, they can work with people they can trust, where we crowd out that kind of sneaky, underhanded business that sometimes happens out there in the investor community.
Yeah.
Where our hope is that at some point we get so big that investors out there say, well, I just have to get my license so that I can join StepStone, because that's the only place business gets done fairly and honestly and easily anymore. Investors like to make business hard on each other, and I don't understand that. And I don't know why they do that. So StepStone is a home where they can do business easily with each other.
Yeah, I like that description. So we actually have a comment here from, I don't know if you know her, but Cameron says, "Yep, it was my idea. Thanks for the shout out."
Cameron gets 100% of the credit for StepStone Realty. How's that?
So it was her idea. No, that's really good. What is that one big myth that you see when agents are trying to think about becoming investors, that they always have in their head, that maybe, an agent cannot also be an investor? You either need to be an agent or an investor. You can't do both.
Yeah, it comes from both sides. From the realtor's perspective, they're told over and over and over again that they should not invest, that it's going to get them in trouble, or that they have a fiduciary responsibility to their seller. Those all are based upon myth. It really depends on how you're presenting yourself. So I always like to tell people, just because you're a licensed real estate agent does not mean you have a fiduciary responsibility to the world. You only have a fiduciary responsibility to those you represent. And so you didn't agree to represent someone. You didn't even imply that you were going to represent them. If you come in as principal and you're saying, I want to buy the home, then the person you represent in that circumstance is yourself. So in fact, if you don't get you the best deal you can, you should sue you for not meeting your fiduciary responsibility to yourself. So it doesn't make any sense to say that I have fiduciary responsibility to that seller if you're not representing that seller. And that is a big myth. And it's such a myth that's perpetuated that the boards perpetuate that myth. I know Angie was in a class one time where the instructor specifically said, don't invest, you'll get in trouble.
Wow.
And sure, if you are marketing yourself as real estate agent and you meet somebody, then you are implying that you have a responsibility to their needs and their wants. But if you're marketing yourself as an investor, that doesn't come into play. So there's nothing preventing you from investing. It's just a matter of your marketing approach.
Right. So let's get into the elephant in the room, right? The what's happening in the market right now.
Sure.
Um, we're seeing a very big crisis, and you and I have talked about it before, and we believe that it's only going to get worse. So you've actually been through that 2008 financial crisis. Is there anything that you learned during that time that maybe you'll be applying this time, or that it seems a little familiar, or some cautionary tales maybe?
Yeah, I mean, it comes with good and bad, and obviously, hindsight's 2020. I wish I had gone through it prior to 2008, so I would have been more prepared. So it's more that I had to adapt, and the good is that truthfully, probably half your investor competitors are going to go away. That's just a fact. Many investors, particularly ones that you may even think are successful, who are successful wholesaling or something like that, when they've only been in an up market, it create a lot of bad habits. They're going to learn real quick that their buyers list isn't the same buyers list anymore. That the prices they were getting in being able to sell and wholesale and make $5,000-$10,000 they don't exist anymore. And then of course you have your whole set of investors that really only know how to make money flipping property. Flips get tougher to do. They get scarier. We're used to being in an environment where if I take an extra 3 months to get a flip done, that's okay, because all of that happened was my house became worth more.
Right.
And so that carrying cost is absorbed by the appreciation. It's a different world, they're also used to a world where you put a house up for market, a flip up for market, and you expect that first weekend you're going to get several showings and at least one offer, if not multiple offers. It's scary to sit on a flip and not have a showing for 30 days. That's the way the world's going to be, or at least it was in 2008. And so you have to learn to adapt. And the good news is, like I said, is half your competition is going to go away, and the amount of distress out there, the amount of marketing opportunity is going to go up. And so if you're able to adapt, if you're able to figure out how to monetize that market, your cost per lead is going to go down drastically. I can tell you exactly what our cost per lead was in 2009. It's $45 a lead. I'm sure anybody listening to this now would just die for those kind of numbers,
Yes.
right? I'm not saying it's going to be like that again. I don't know, right? But it will be cheaper. We know that it'll be cheaper. The negative is that it's going to force you to make money in new ways, in different ways. To be honest with you, if you're not a licensed investor, you should get licensed. Most of your marketing is going to bring short sales, and they don't have to be scary. You probably heard horror stories about short sales. Truthfully, when you hit a down market, and there's a lot of them, the lenders are going to bolster up their departments. They're going to be a lot quicker to dissolve those things. They're a lot easier to work with than they are today. So you should be prepared for that. But generally, the way you make money off of short sales is to list it. Unless you're a StepStone agent, we have a different way we make money off those, but I'll save that for another time. And then, and you got to get well versed in owner finance, all various kinds of owner finance, either taking it down owner finance or selling it owner finance. Those opportunities exist out there significantly. And if you don't know those opportunities, if you only know how to wholesale, if you only know how to flip, it's going to make things difficult. But if you have lots of tools, if you have lots of opportunities, if you have lots of different ways to monetize leads, it actually is a better market for you than an up market.
Nice. I completely agree. And what do you see coming as far as you think the buyer pool is going to dry up? Do you think it's going to change? It's going to become more sophisticated buyers, or are we going to have buyers that are going to want ridiculous discounts?
You
Uh,
mean retail buyers, or do you mean investor buyers or wholesaling too?
let's deal with investor buyers first. So there's going to still be people, I believe, wholesaling right now, right? And I think wholesaling is always going to be here. It's always going to be an option. So who are these wholesalers in a market like that going to be wholesaling to? What kind of strategies do you think they should be implementing?
Generally buy and hold people. So you're going to have less flippers that are looking for property, and and it's a different buy and hold crowd. So there's a very large crowd of Americans that play the market very, very well, and they purchase property in every down market and hold it through the up markets. And so there's people just who have been waiting for this, who have not been spending money, who have been saving money or investing in other things, or have their money in the stock market instead, who are ready when things go south to buy houses because they know they will reappreciate.
Mm.
And there's not a better investment. I mean, what better thing than to be able to invest in something and have somebody else pay for it, which is really what real estate is, right?
Right.
And so being able to identify those buyers is really what's going to give you the ability to wholesale in this new market. And I think that is in 2008 and 9 and up to 2010 and 11 is where we had success, is in identifying a good group of buyers that were ready, and that we could just offload property to fairly quickly.
Okay, so it's building those relationships, trying to get educated on what those buyers are going to look like, trying to find them. Um,
Yeah.
all right. And how do you see financing working in a situation like what we are now? Like, do you think financing is going to dry up as far as even buyers being able to refinance loans or get more of those types of loans? Is it going to be harder? I mean, what do you anticipate?
We're already seeing signs of that. We're already seeing the death of non-owner occupied loans, at least for the time being. And when they come back, it's going to be more restricted. I've seen a couple of reports now that credit score requirements, bank overlays is what this always comes down to, right? So even on FHA only has a minimum credit score of what, 560 or something ridiculously small, right?
Right.
But it's not like you can just go get an FHA loan if you have that low of a credit score, because the bank overlays is really what matters. And so the banks say, okay, that's the minimum requirements, but here's our requirements. And those requirements are just going to go up. Credit always gets restricted in the down market, because they're afraid of the higher defaults. And so they're going to put more restrictions on to minimize their defaults. And that, I mean, that's what dries up your buyer pool just as much as the fact that people lost jobs. Is even the people with jobs, or maybe had a temporary job loss and had a little bit of a credit hit, are restricted from getting those loans too, because of the higher requirements by the lender.
So that's what you're talking about overlays, is that you have your standards and then the banks add all their requirements on top of that, which makes it that much harder to get loans.
Right.
So we actually have a question right now from Chris Ramirez.
Chris?
Yes. And she says, what do you think will happen to Opendoor type companies as competitors?
That's going to be an interesting question. I wish I knew. There was a couple of companies that kind of came in right before the crash, that quickly went away. Your 1% realty companies all kind of went away, um, because sellers wanted full service at that time because it was harder to sell a home. So
Right.
saying we do minimal service and just put your house on the MLS wasn't a very appealing prospect to sellers. I suspect we're going to see a similar thing happen, at least with some, if not most of them. I don't know about all of them. those type of companies like Opendoor. It was funny when Opendoor was starting to get hot. I read a good article about them, and their investors had been asking them, what's your plan if the market goes down? And their answer was really, really, actually really weak, which was, well, we could just keep them and put them renters in them. They didn't have a specific plan. It was more like this concept they had. And what was sad is the market's so hot and things are going so fast and the stock market's going up. Their investors were like, okay, that sounds good. It's like, I bought a better answer than that.
Yeah.
And so it's going to be interesting to see how quickly they're able to put that plan B together, and if it holds them out or if they just fold. I don't know.
Yeah. And now switching over to retail buyers, what are your thoughts there? What are your thoughts right now with the retail market for at least those of us that are in the middle of flips, renovating houses or even building houses? Like, how do you see this right now? So the government's coming out with a lot of stimulus and a lot of trying to help, and interest rates are ridiculously low. So how do you see this hurting or helping retail buyers and helping the investors that have properties right now?
I mean, any stimulus is going to help, but the fact is that we're not going to pick up where we left off. That's not realistic. You just don't lay off 30% of Americans, and then the next week we say, hey, it's all good again, and everybody gets rehired. Um, there's consumer fear. There's going to be consumer worry. There's going to be continual talk about a second wave of the virus. People are going to continue to hoard, maybe not hoard toilet paper, but they're gonna hoard money.
Right.
And so consumer spending, just the biggest engine of the economy, is going to be down, which means companies just can't hire, and companies are going to learn that they don't need as many people. I mean, that's one of the things that's going to happen here too. Is they're going to say, hey, we actually did pretty good without so and so. Maybe we don't need to hire them back. So the economy is not going to bounce back in a day, and that's why you're going to see distress. That's why you're going to see a shrinkage of the buyer's pool. It's very likely we will get into a buyer's market. But that doesn't mean that economic activity just doesn't cease to exist. It will exist. There will still be buyers. There will still be sellers. It doesn't matter. I mean, in 2008 and 9, we sold property on the open market, right? There's still buyers, people who still want homes. It's just there are less of them. And so your months of inventory go up, and that means your days on market go up. So I'm not saying don't do flips. I'm just saying have a different expectation for flips and have a different buying criteria for flips. And if you're currently involved in a flip, just get prepared for a longer hold time. And so you can still sell it, but don't expect to sell it in week one. We'll have this thing out the door in 45 days. I can think of a flip in particular that we sold 180 days after we listed it.
Wow.
And we were like, that's pretty good. We did all right. And that's not an abnormal thing. So you just have to expect that people will still buy houses. You're also going to find that they're going to be a lot more picky. So paying attention to detail in your rehabs, I think, even becomes more important.
Yeah.
There's things you could probably get away with in this market that you're not going to get away with in a down market. Buyers in a buyer's market can be more picky. There's plenty of inventory. There's plenty of competition. So paying attention to detail and making sure that your flip is perfect is going to help you sell it.
So we actually have a question from Javier. He says, how much do you foresee retail prices tumbling percentage-wise?
I don't know. I can get on my crystal ball. I'm certainly not an economist, and truthfully, I don't even think economists can answer that question.
No.
Because we just don't know. This is the every crash is unique. This one's really unique, right? I mean, this one's just because it was so artificially created. Not artificially created. That's a bad way of putting it, but it wasn't a bubble that just burst on its own. It was something that said, "Hey, we got this economy and it's going. Let's stop. Just everybody stop." And so that's a very unique situation. I would tell you that I've been advising my agents that when they do their ARVs to immediately knock off 10% and go for that.
Really?
And so, yeah, and it may not affect the economies, particularly of places like Austin and Dallas are probably going to be hurt a little bit less than San Antonio and Houston, to be honest with you. But how much exactly, time will tell. But just to be kind of on the safe side, I would knock 10% off that ARV and then do my formula and decide if I want to buy it.
Well, Javier's follow up to that was I was kind of hoping you had a crystal ball. So you mentioned before a buyer's market. Can you describe what is a buyer's market? What does that mean?
It means that the buyers hold all the cards, right? That
Mm.
they're the ones who control, and we've been in a seller's market for a very long time, meaning that your inventory is so low that when you put out a product, it could be anything, and everybody's going to be bidding on it. Generally, the kind of rule of thumb is to look at months of inventory, and if you cross over 6 months of inventory, you're in a. Do I have that right? As a 4 or 6? I can't even remember off the
I
top of my
think it's
head, but
6.
6 months, yeah. Of inventory, you're in a buyer's market. If you're less than 6 months inventory, you're in a seller's market. I always, recently I've been saying, I said, we're not in a buyer's market and we're not in a seller's market. We're in a wholesaler's market. And I think that's
Mm.
probably been true for a number of years, because if you can get any kind of discount at all, you can sell that thing and make some money. That's definitely no longer true.
So it's funny that you were saying quality on rehabs because we were actually talking about this with John recently. That we put a house on the market on Thursday, 1,200 square feet for 260, and in San Antonio that's a big price point. And we had a ton of showings, and it went under contract like two days later, full price and everything, and they're excited, right? And we were like, man, did we get lucky or what does this mean, right? And that's when we realized that what we feel, and you're just kind of validating, is the quality of the renovations moving forward is going to matter tremendously.
Yep.
And we do pride ourselves in putting out a great product, and we just that hit us the most now. And we're in the middle of a couple more renovations that we're like, all right, we need to really take that extra step to make sure that everything is great, because that's what we're seeing now. I mean, we're seeing that now the buyers are starting to hold the cards and they can be as picky as they want.
Yep.
Yeah, yeah. And John is saying right now we had two full price offers. Thank you, John.
Yeah. We are seeing a little bit of a lag. So I think you're right. I think that's definitely part of it. And I know you guys do quality work. I think we've seen a little bit of a lag. So actually, revenue wise for a brokerage, which we're very much dependent upon closings, right?
Mm-hmm.
We haven't seen a drop off yet, but a lot of that is lag. So anybody who was in the market looking for a house, who had a loan approval, probably is almost scrambling to get something closed as fast as possible.
Yeah.
And so we've almost seen a little bit of a rush of closings, but I expect to see the lag results, coming in the next couple of weeks, where all of a sudden closings really dry up for a while. And which is difficult for people, and even some of my agents who are currently putting their house up for sale, their flip up for sale. And I know there's probably some people listening who are in that same boat. Um, I think John's point is key there. Go back through your flip, make sure it's perfect.
Yeah.
Don't be satisfied with anything less than perfection right now.
What are your thoughts right now on Airbnbs?
Tough market.
Yeah.
Who's vacationing, right? Who's traveling? They're subject to the same impact that any kind of travel industry is having right now. Hotels, Airbnbs, airplanes, they're tough, and I know some of my agents are struggling through that. Um, you got it. You're going to have to do what you got to do right now, and I get that. Um, I think where there's always buyers is owner finance. If you need to sell a couple off, consider owner financing,
Mm-hmm.
um, because that market exists. And there's some people who were in the buyer pool, wanted a home, and their loans have gotten pulled from them, because they gotten a furlough for a short time, but they know they're getting their job back, and they got enough money, but their loans have been pulled. Owner finance is a good opportunity to at least get rid of a couple of those mortgages you might be holding on to right now, to sustain yourself through the time. But it's tough. And if that was your main business focus, it's a tough time. It won't always be a tough time, but it's a tough time.
And as far as it won't always be a tough time, like, how do you see this playing out? Like, I mean, looking at it, and obviously you're not, well, even economists don't know. But I mean, what's your best guess based on what you saw in 2008 and things developing? Like, how do you see this? Do you think this is going to be? I've heard two different scenarios, right? I've heard people say this is going to be like 9/11. That was like a V, right? The market crashed and it picked right back up and everything was good. Or is it going to be like 2008? That was more like a U shape where it fell and it was at the bottom for a little bit and it took a while to get up? Or is it going to be worse than that? Like, I mean, what would your hunch be? What do you think?
I think that really the only question, it'll definitely come back up, more in the style of 9/11. But the real question is how low does it go to begin? And so even if it's a beep, it might be a really deep beep, which will take a while to come back up. And I think that's probably the more likely scenario. But I think the difference between this and 2009 is that there was a good fundamental in the economy, which has zero to do with any government policy and is purely 100% demographic related. And that is the emergence of the millennial market. And I know you know this, John. We've read the same books, right? But I believe that's true, and I believe that that's what we've been seeing since 2008, all through the Obama years and through the early part of the Trump administration. Is really policies had very little to do with it, and it has been much more the fact that the buying power of the world's largest generation, is emerging and reaching to the point where they become their maximum buying power, which they still have a ways to go. And so the economy has just been able to absorb, their consumption, and so that has been the driving engine behind our economy for the last 10 years.
Wow. So it's gonna still get worse in your opinion.
Oh yeah, I mean, that's really the question. What the question comes down to is how bad is it going to get, and that's going to determine how long it takes to get out of it. We'll get out of it because you're not the millennial generation isn't going away. They're still going to be the largest generation, and they are still reaching those prime buying years. And so it's going to be a while before we just have bad enough demographics to have hiccups in the economy. But how low will it go? How much unemployment are we going to see? And initially, when the stay-at-home orders are released, how much job creation, is immediate? I don't think it's going to be as significant as we're being told. I think it's going to be a lot smaller. And so, and then we're going to create some fundamentals in our economy that aren't as great. We're driving up the debt. We're creating competition for money, that's going to drive up interest rates. And really, the only way we overcome this massive debt load is inflation. So, like I said, I'm not an economist. I know enough
Right.
to position, to try to make predictions, to try to do what I can to prepare myself and my agents for what's to come. You got to plan for the worst and hope for the best, right? And if I'm a person who's planning for the worst, I am educating myself on multiple techniques in investing. and I'm definitely making sure that I'm a licensed agent.
So if you feel that inflation is going to be an issue, would it make the most sense to try to hold on to rentals if you can, for just the fact of just once this bounces back, that inflation may take off?
I think you have to be balanced because we've had high debt predict inflation before that hasn't come about, and
Right.
where it has come about. And so, the that's a good rental versus wrap debate. Am I going to wrap out,
Yeah.
owner finance a property, or am I going to rent a property? Inflation helps the landlords and hurts the creditors. So if you're a lender, inflation is actually not good because you basically set money that you're going to earn over a longer period of time, that's getting devalued.
Right.
Whereas as a renter, you're holding an asset that's gaining value. So, or as a landlord, I should say. So, hedge your bets by having multiple strategies. Just because there's inflation doesn't mean owner finance is a bad thing. It's just less good.
Okay.
And just because there's non-inflation doesn't mean that holding the rental was not the right choice. It just means it's less good. So hold some rentals, hold some wraps, wholesale some, and be prepared to do some short sales. And that's how you not only get through an economy like this, but you actually really thrive in an economy like this. You collect doors, you collect notes, you collect property, and regardless, that's never ever a bad thing.
And should you try to flip in an economy like that? I mean,
you know, I wouldn't be against flips, but I think you're going to struggle if that's your only operation.
mm,
I think it's going to be difficult because you need better deals and they're harder to find. So, if you're taking 10% off the top just in anticipation of some depreciation or a longer hold time, think about how fewer deals are that are that good. And it's going to re educate wholesalers. That's what I mean by that.
yeah, I think the good wholesalers are gonna make a killing on this, because they're gonna. That's one thing that I've realized even now. This past weekend, we got 6 wholesale deals, and I'm looking at them, and they're still wholesaling like nothing's wrong. And I'm like, dude, these deals are marginal at best, and we're getting into this market right now that's like, this stuff is not going to slide anymore. And the problem is they got so used to doing it that way that they don't understand what they're doing wrong. They don't know what a good deal even looks like. They're like, well, it's sold before, and it's like,
Yeah, I had one of my agents throw me a deal and said, "Would you do this deal?" I'm kind of in a debate with my husband about this. And I looked at it and I said, it's okay, but it's quite a bit of cash. And if I were you, I would just pass on it and wait and use that cash to buy 2 or 3 deals. So deals that wholesalers were putting out that were okay are now going to cause buyers in that market, investors, to say, you know what, if I just hold out, there'll be 2 or 3 that come along that are better than that.
yeah.
That's where it drives it down. That's why we're in a buyer's market.
Yeah, I mean, we're starting to definitely be that. I had somebody yesterday that wanted to partner with us on a deal, and he brought me a deal that's it's selling for just under 200,000. The ARV is like 400 something. It needs everything's like 2,300 square foot home, and I was like, I'm telling you right now, I'm gonna want a big discount on that property. I was like, cause
Oh,
in San Antonio, $400,000 price point. I was like, I'm excluding a lot of the market. I was like, there's a lot of risk,
yeah,
so we can't do that.
and there's some high tech that was starting to expand into San Antonio. Are they still going to do that, or are they going to hold off?
Yeah,
My guess is companies are going to hold off on big changes, big expansions for a while, and they're going to get cash greedy, just like the consumer is going to get cash greedy, and they're going to say, you know what, let's build up some reserves instead of expanding right now, and just to wait to see what happens. And those mindsets take a while to change,
yeah.
and I think that's like I said, I think the fundamentals of the millennials make it more like a 2001 curve than a 2008 curve. But where is that bottom going to start?
That's interesting. That's an interesting comparison. But Stephen Wilson leaves a comment saying that wholesalers are used to leaving no meat on the bone. So yeah, those wholesalers, they're gonna struggle, because if they don't know how to leave some meat, how to negotiate. And that's really where it is. It's not that, they're trying to make a killing. Is a lot of times they don't know how to negotiate. I mean, the homeowner says, I want this. And they're like, okay. It's like, no, there's a price for that house.
Yeah, I think wholesalers get used to the constant influx of new investors. And I'm not saying they're taking advantage of new investors. I'm not putting it that way. They're just selling things what they'll sell for.
Right.
But you got a constant influx of new investors. You get a constant influx of motivated buyers, people who just want something. They just want to get started. They don't care if it doesn't make a lot of money, or they just break even. They just want that education of going through the flip or going through the deal, or whatever it is. Say goodbye to that kind of buyer. That kind of buyer is not going to exist for very long now. It is harder to sell seminars. It is harder to sell, to bring people into real estate in a down market, because nobody thinks real estate, it's really crappy right now, that's the place I should be.
Right.
Truthfully, it is,
It
but
is.
that's not the mindset. It's when the real estate starts to get hot and they hear on the news how hot real estate is, and say, oh well, that's where I should be to get in, to make some money. And that's why you get a massive influx of new investors throughout a hot market. But you're going to see that constant influx dry up. And so leaving a lot of meat on the bone is how you have repeat buyers, and repeat buyers in a down market are gold.
Yes. Yes. I mean, that's essentially how we build such a great, not just a buyer's list, but even became a lender's list. Is that we left so much meat on the wholesales that we did, that we created such great relationships with all our investors, that when it came time to borrowing from them so we can partner on deals and do stuff, they were more than happy to work with us, and I lived it, just this time frame. And I mean, if that made sense now, it would definitely make sense later. um John Barr has a question.
Oh
uh,
God.
Apparently Jesus. Okay, sorry, playing with the features here and it just got a little out of hand. Okay, what do you do if an underlying lien that needs to be paid off on an owner finance? What do you do if you have an underlying lien that needs to get paid off in an owner finance?
Not sure I understand the question. So we've done a wrap, and for some reason that underlying lien has to get paid off.
Apparently, if you have an
Uh,
underlying lien that needs to get paid off in an owner finance. Hmm.
like, is he talking about a due on sale clause call?
I don't know. Bar, you're gonna have to elaborate on that one. So
I
I don't
mean,
know.
really, the only thing you can do is sell the note, other than some other liquid assets that you may have to be able to get rid of that underlying lien. But if it has to get paid off, selling the note is the answer. And there don't be note buyers through a down economy. I mean, think about it. Do I want to get a nice, you know, even 7 or 8% return on this note versus what's happening in the stock market, in a down economy? So there's definitely note buyers.
So he just sent a clarification. He says, say you're flipping a house and have to switch to owner finance. So I guess selling the note of the money that you borrowed for the flip.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, I mean, same thing. I mean, that's even a better situation in my opinion, because you can pre-sell the note, so that if you get an owner finance buyer in there, it's certain price, certain range, certain interest rate, that you have a ready buyer that's going to buy out the note and pay off that underlying lien.
Yeah. All right. So hope that helps, John. So what advice we had? I had this earlier. I was kind of holding off for it. So Michael Martinez says, what advice do you have for new investors in this market?
Um, again, I think you're almost at an advantage. So I took a golf lesson the other day, and in golf is a lot of creating good habits by getting rid of your bad habits. And I think that's the struggle experienced investors are going to have right now who came in during a hot market is they've created a lot of bad habits that it's harder to get rid of a bad habit than just start fresh with good habits. And so good habits to me would be to not limit your marketing, number one. So, in these hot markets, investors like to filter their lists like crazy. Well, I only want to buy in this area, and I only market to people with so much equity. So I filter out for no equity deals. No reason to do that because the opportunity is more about motivation than about equity in the property. And so that's the first piece of advice I can give you is just market, just meet people, just find motivated sellers. But educate yourself about varying techniques. You have to be a jack of all trades in this market. You just have to be. And so, if the more you can understand, the more techniques you can pick up, the quicker you can pick them up, the better off you're going to be.
And what do you recommend as far as educating yourself? Is there something that you recommend that would be the best source of this? Like, where does he go as a new investor?
Man, there's so much everywhere. I give online CE classes. You could certainly take those. There's CE classes, meaning continuing education classes for agents, but they're all on investor topics. We do them online. You can look them all up on StepStoneTexas.com. So I got my plug in.
There
That's
you
cool.
go.
Thank you. We're going to be coming out with a lot more of that too. In all of our classes, I think the thing that makes them unique is that even though they're investor topics for agents, I mean, they're applicable to anybody. You don't have to be an agent to take it. They just happen to get CE credit with the state of Texas, but anybody can take them. And I think what makes them unique is we are taking every single one of those classes and we're adjusting. We're picking the ones out that are most applicable to today's market, and we're specifically applying it to how you work that kind of transaction in an economy like this. And so, I think that's a great start. But you can't read enough, you can't network enough, you can't watch enough, you can't learn enough. Don't do it at the expense of doing. What I mean by that is some people just want to learn forever and then they never actually go do anything.
Mm-hmm.
If the decision time comes down to I've got time to do or I've got time to learn, then do. But make time for learning.
Yeah.
So I think that's the best advice I can give.
Nice. And kind of to piggyback on that, the way that I got started in real estate is I found an investor that needed help. They were very seasoned. They had their stuff on lockdown, and I didn't know what I was doing. So I went to them and I was like, "Hey, I'm willing to do whatever the hell you guys need, as long as you teach me." And I was able to learn as they implemented things, and they taught me a lot about subject twos and how to do wraps and everything. And it was just a wealth of knowledge, right? And I didn't get paid much, but I learned a ton within those few months of doing it. But I mean, as far as so Stephen Wilson here comments, he puts that you can go to Bigger Pockets in YouTube. My thing with that is that there's been so many charlatans right now, and I think you have to be careful because it's like you said, there's a lot out there. So not everything is good. And what I've seen is that there's so many people out there just putting out like hype about real estate. And I'm seeing it still right now that you got to try to find somebody that at least has some ethics that you align with. That if you want to learn from them, you're learning from somebody that at least has the similar ethics. Because there's still people teaching very bad strategies of, here's your time, homeowners are struggling, here's time to take advantage. And if you're looking at being a real estate investor as taking advantage of them, taking advantage of a homeowner or a buyer, I mean, you're going about it, I think, all the wrong ways, right? So, I mean, I strongly recommend, like, just be careful who you learn from. I love attending your CE classes because of that. I mean, with Dan, it's every class he does is different because he remembers different things and, like, different strategies. And because you're a full-time investor, you do a strategy now and you're like, you know what, I picked this up and this is how we doing it now. So it's not a repetitive kind of webinar that somebody just keeps selling. It's stuff that you just keep, you know, improving on and learning on and modifying. So that kind of knowledge, I think, is very crucial. And obviously, the investor's journey. You should be watching us every week. um,
I appreciate that. I think ethics and integrity are huge. But also, make sure that what you're watching, what you're learning about is applicable to a different economy. And, I think John's done a fantastic job of preparing himself for it. And we talked about that a lot in our personal meetings. We talked about that. What are you guys going to do if the economy turns?
yes.
And one of the things we often talk about is the fact that nobody ever knows when it's going to happen, because it's not something that comes with big flashing red lights. In retrospect, you always say, "Well, we should have seen this coming," but that's easy to do. It's easy to do. Look back and say that, and the handful of people who made a bunch of money on the crash of 2008 and saw it coming, sure. But that's not most of us, and you can't expect that, and you can't beat yourself up over that. And so instead, what you can do is be prepared for that. And John's done a great job of preparing himself for that. And so make sure that whoever you're listening to and whoever you're learning from is applying those skills and that knowledge to a whole new world.
Very nice. And what is one thing that you feel that you wish you would have known before you guys started in real estate, or somebody would have told you about real estate?
That it's hard. That sounds bad. I don't want to discourage anybody from doing it. Anything worth doing is hard. I had the unfortunate incident of getting my first two deals super easily.
Yeah.
And which made me believe, and it created a mindset in me that it was easy. And I think that made it a struggle for a while until I realized that I really had to work at it, and that I really had to. That you can't market enough, you can't meet enough sellers, you can't talk to enough sellers. That you got to put in the work. That deals fall apart, you can't count on them, so you have to have a lot of them.
Yeah. And if you had to tell people, all right, focus on these 3 strategies. Somebody's new. They're like, all right, what do I learn? There's a million things to do in real estate, right? You have multifamily, you have commercials, you have rentals, flips, owner finance, storage units. What's something that you're like, hey, in a down market, try to stick to this? What would that be?
Um, I'll give you two. I mean, they branch off into multiple things. But if I was going to start, if I said I need to learn how to do these two things that will get me a good jump start in this kind of down market, the two things I would learn is how to get something under a cash contract and how to get something under a subject to contract.
Mm.
Either one of those you can wholesale, but you can also start to do other things with them as you start to learn more techniques. And the reason I say that is because it really covers every seller that you're going to be. I mean, you got to start somewhere. And where it always starts is with the seller. You've got to meet the seller. You've got to market to and find the seller. And you got to find a motivated seller. And if you have a motivated seller and you're going to put it under contract, it doesn't matter how much equity they have. There's two solutions. A cash one, if they got a lot of equity, although it doesn't have to be cash just because they have a lot of equity, it can be owner finance as well. But there's locking them up to take over their payments. That's it. There's all sorts of nuances. There's all sorts of different ways you can do it. But if you could just do those two things simply, that's a good start.
And what's a subject to? And can you explain that?
Wow, you just asked for my 2-hour CE class.
Good. Oh, well, in less than 5 minutes.
um, I always tell people you actually buy all your properties subject to. Um, all that means sub to means subject to something. And so whenever you buy property, you're always buying it subject to something. Just read your Schedule B of your title report. You're buying it subject to existing deed restrictions, or you're buying it subject to its easements, or you're buying it subject to some mineral rights, or whatever it is. Those are all the exemptions in Schedule B. But in particular, when investors say, I've got a sub two deal or I bought a sub two, really what they're talking about is I bought it subject to the existing financing that's on the property. So I meet a seller, Bob. Bob has a loan with Wells Fargo for $100,000. And I say, Bob, well, I can buy it from you for $100,000. And the way I can do that is I can just take over those payments with Wells Fargo. And it sounds like I'm assuming that note, but that's not really what's happening in subject to. And a loan assumption, that note would change from Bob to me, and then I would be responsible for that note. But in subject to, what's happening is I'm purchasing the home by the deed transferring to me, but that loan between Wells Fargo and Bob stays in place. And technically, it's still Bob responsible for that note. However, I'm going to make those payments to Wells Fargo, because if I don't, Wells Fargo will foreclose and I will lose the home. So I'm just basically making the payments on Bob's behalf, but I am the owner of the property, because the note and deed of trust have zero to do with ownership. The only thing that has anything to do with ownership is the warranty deed, the deed to the property. And by Bob giving me the deed to the property without paying off that note and deed of trust, I'm the owner of the property. Bob's kind of still on the hook for the note, but I'm going to make the payment, so I retain ownership of the property. And that, in like the super quickest nutshell I could do, is subject to.
I think if that opens up a ton more questions. But I think definitely that's why you want to attend that CE class, because I mean, just that overview. If you understand the power of subject to deals, it will blow your mind the ability and the advantages that you're going to have, especially when people start struggling and falling behind on their payments. I mean, subject to is going to be an amazing strategy. And like Dan says, subject to, a lot of times, especially when you're wholesaling, they'll sometimes sell for more than a regular deal because the financing is in place. So somebody doesn't have to come up with that money already. It's already in there, right? And they get it sometimes at a very low interest rate. That if they had to borrow it, they'll get it at 10%, 12% interest. So, I mean, all these things have value. So, I mean, amazing, amazing information there. So, before we leave, I'm just curious, and this is kind of a plug, I guess, but only if you answer it right. what what is that unique advantage that people have by being a StepStone agent in a situation like this? Like, what is something that being a StepStone agent, right, being an investor, having access to your classes and stuff, like, what is that advantage to somebody right now in the situation that we're in?
We open up more doors. That's really what it's about. If you're a licensed agent and you go to some other brokerage, there's nothing wrong with that. It just means that less doors are open to you. Or if you're an investor and you don't get licensed and don't come with StepStone, less doors are open to you, meaning less opportunity exists. We're all about creating more opportunity. So, when you're a licensed agent with us, that means there's nothing, there's no homeowner you can't help and make money from.
Right.
You have a solution no matter what the problem is, no matter what the economy is, no matter what's going on in the market. You have a solution for every homeowner you meet. And so that's what we're about. We're about making sure that every single door is open to you. And no other brokerage does that. And so, and there's not only, you can't just say we open up every door by allowing your agents to do it. You have to show them how to do it.
Hmm.
And so the education that we have, the community that we have, where we educate each other and show each other different ways of doing it, or help each other think about different ways of doing it, keeps all those doors open. And so we have to monetize all our leads. That's how we compete. That's how we make more money. That's how we do well for ourselves. That's how we learn new systems. That's what we're about, is we're about opening up those doors.
I love it. I mean, I'm not a StepStone agent. I'm an honorary
Your
investor.
Honor,
Yeah.
it's something to be said. I mean, we do consider people who work with their spouses or business partners to be just as much StepStone as the agent, because it'd be silly for two business partners to both have their license and take on that expense. There's no reason to do that.
Right.
But you understand, you're working together, you're doing those deals together. So John is invited to all the things that we do just as much, just by the fact that he's business partners with one of our agents, and because we just see him as one entity. Prime Homes is our agent,
Yeah.
is the way we see that.
And it's funny. Cameron just actually commented, "StepStone rocks." Uh, but it's actually funny. I always tell people when they're looking at getting into real estate, because we've been approached. John has been approached by all these other brokerages, so like EXP and everybody else. And to me, it's just like, but you don't have the. We're investors. We didn't come into this to be a retail agent. If you want to be a retail agent, I mean, yeah, go to Keller Williams or whatever. But if you want to be an investor, it's like, why wouldn't you go to StepStone? Like, it's literally, and we've done the research, right? I mean, it's not even that just because we know each other. We look out there, we see, even in our masterminds, I try to look out, like, what's your competition look like? But there isn't any. I mean, every other brokerage that's opened up, they're strictly for wholesalers, right? Which is just avenues to generate leads. But you guys focus on educating. I mean, what do you have throughout the month for your members? You have masterminds, the CE groups. What do you have?
Yeah, I mean, we do the C classes, we do monthly masterminds in every market, is what we were doing live. Now we're doing them every week online, and all of our agents are coming at one time, and they've been fantastic, actually. It's been a lot of fun. We do workshops where we're looking into some ways we can bring some other kinds of classes online and stuff as we go through this shut in. But I mean, and then what we do, we already had done some classes online. We're going to expand on those. We are purely, I mean, not purely, a major component of StepStone is the education about investing, because we want to learn too. So we're
Right.
bringing in speakers, we're bringing in people, we're still investing. We want to learn too. You cannot stop learning about investing because it always changes. It always, some new things happen, some new things come up. And so we're about keeping our agents on the cutting edge of what's going on, keeping them up to date about what's going on, what's working out there, what's happening. I mean, I guess the best thing I could say, or the phrase that I think nails it down is that StepStone is the brokerage that gets it. And if you're a creative real estate investor, I mean, we get it. And so we know what you want. We listen to you. We bring you what you want. We're trying to make you more successful. I'm more successful when you're more successful. That's what it's about.
I was just gonna say, and it's not even just that, like, a generosity thing. Is that the more successful your agents are, the more successful your brokerage becomes. And I mean, it's something that's just logic. You know what I mean? You want them to succeed, so then you guys succeed.
It's fun to watch our agents have success,
Yeah.
even sometimes when I'm not a part of it, right?
Right.
They wholesale something, I don't make any money, but it's still fun to see that they took the knowledge, they took what they learned, they took one of our other agents classes and learned how to do some cold calling, and cold called somebody and got a deal, and they remember the stuff they learned in another class about wholesaling, and they make money. I made $0 off that deal, and it's still fun to watch, because the more successful they are, the more money they're going to have to do more marketing, and the more deals they're going to get, and that means eventually I am going to make some money off of those. And so it's just we have a bigger picture, longer term view that I think other brokerages have, and that I just want you to be successful. And if you're successful, I'm sure that I'll benefit from that eventually.
Adrian Salazar comments that it cuts people's learning curve drastically. So,
That's what we're trying to do for sure. I mean, I talk to a lot of agents, and that aren't StepStone agents. So I'm recruiting them, or talking, giving them C classes, and they will tell me the same thing over and over again, which is that in most brokerages, that they're in and been a part of, the other agents don't want to share what they're doing that's making them successful. So the top producers in their office, they hold those cards close to their chest and don't want to say how they're doing it. That has not been the attitude of our agents. They have actually been the opposite of that. I watch some of the workshop classes that some of the agents do, teaching them like, well, this is where I get my list. This is how I put them together. This is what I say on the phone. I mean, it just blows your mind that they're willing and eager to share that information that other places there's no way they would share it, and they do it for our agents for free.
Yes.
We don't even make any money on it.
Yeah, we got to talk about that. But it's just that because we don't look at it. I think the investor that's really uh, loves this business, they don't look at other investors as competition. Like to us, there's plenty out there for everybody, and at the end of the day, we can teach you step by step what to do and how to do everything, but you still have to go out there and take action. So that's always the biggest factor, right? Is just being able to get out there with whatever you learn and take action. Like you said, how you got started? You got started by just stumbling, hitting yourself, learning. Oh, well, that's not how you do that. So, yeah,
Just it brings us back to what we started at the beginning of this conversation. Is difference between not success and success in this business is being determined.
yes, very nice. So, parting words. Everybody right now is very stressed, very scared of all the uncertainty that's coming in that's coming up. Um, what's your advice to them? What would be your parting words to them?
I'm not immune to it either. I'm anxious. I think we're all anxious. I heard a doctor describe the other day that we're all experiencing PTSD in ways similar to, although not as extreme as our troops have experienced. And that's, where they experience it in a much more intense scale, but we're experiencing in a smaller scale, which is we wake up every day not knowing what's going to happen, or we're not going to get sick and die. And so that low level of fear it's like creating PTSD in all of us. We're all being anxious and things like that. John, you and I have read quite a bit of books, business books, and some of my favorite ones more talk about personally how you just conduct yourself and handle yourself personally to get through. And then I think they're setting yourself up because business oftentimes can be stressful. And so, pieces of advice right now that I would have for all of you is to keep a routine. That I think is hugely important when we're out of our normal routine. So I've been trying to make it a point. Not always successful. You can't be hard on yourself when you're not successful. But the more you can do these things, I think the better. So, for example, to be up, showered, shaved, and dressed by 9 o'clock, and dressed. Not just pajamas, but dressed for the day, right? I think that just makes you a little bit more productive, makes it a little bit easier. I've gotten on to wearing shoes just so I don't lay on the couch. But because you're just kind of in a different mode to be dressed and ready for the day. To get lots of sleep. That one's been difficult because sometimes it's just hard to sleep. But anything you can do to help yourself sleep is going to decrease that stress level. Don't be workaholic. This is the worst time to be workaholic. Just have a routine. I'm not saying don't work hard. I'm just saying, have a routine to it. Wind down your day, relax. Some things that just easy things to help you sleep is don't watch TV right before you go to bed, and don't look at your phone right before you go to bed, because the blue light releases hormones to wake you up. Because sleep reduces stress, sleep will make you more productive. And then focus on educating yourself as much as you can through this time.
Right.
If you got extra time, that's what we're trying to. We're trying to work on our systems that needed a little cleanup, and to continue to educate ourselves, and to adapt through it. But you can do the same thing, right? Take this time to educate yourself, have a routine, build some systems, get ready. Just think of it as mandatory prep time, and
Yeah.
most businesses don't have that or get that, and it creates its own set of stresses to have this mandatory time. But just really take care of you more than anything. And truthfully, sleep is also good for your immune system.
Yep.
Eat healthy. That's the other piece of advice. Eat healthy. Avoid junk. It's a little bit easier since you can't just run out and get fast food all the time.
Yep.
But also don't get in the habit of just snacking all day. Just have some nutritious meals and nutritious food.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh man, Cameron, she's hitting you hard. She's saying that Dan needs to practice what he preaches. Just saying, workaholic.
Like I said, I'm not perfect. I'm not perfect. But I would say I ate very healthy today. So
That's it, Cameron. You're working from home now. Well, Dan, I really appreciate your time and everything. I think you've shared amazing knowledge with everybody here, and always the help that you and StepStone provide the community is amazing. So I really want to thank you, and I hope that maybe as time progresses with all of this, and you guys, we see kind of how all of this is shaking out. We can have you back on and kind of see what it is that you're working on, what you've seen, and what other advice you may have for people.
Man, I'd love to do it. I appreciate the opportunity, and I really do hope people got some good things out of it. Eat well, get some sleep.
And don't work too hard. All right. Thank you very much for joining. And thank you all for watching. And I will catch you on the next one.
Thank you.